Hi everyone! So, as most of you guys know, I've been blasting Diablo Immortal pretty hard in the last few weeks since the release on 1st of June. And this was the main game that you could see on my stream as well. I've been covering it on YouTube. And I want to talk about the question I get all the time: is Diablo Immortal a better game than Diablo 3? And also I get similar questions like, what is the best part of Diablo Immortal compared to the 3? What did they take from Diablo 3 that is better in Immortal? And these kind of questions. So first of all, I want to highlight that for those of you who are not aware, that I am mainly a Diablo 3 streamer and YouTuber. At least I have been in the past, and in the future we will move on to Diablo 4. Spoiler alert. But in Diablo Immortal, this was a title that fits into the franchise. It fits into like the whole universe. And obviously, being a Diablo 3 streamer, I was also invited to the alphas. I was in the beta. I've played the game quite a bit before the original release. I've seen the previous versions of the game, and obviously I also wanted to try it myself when it comes. So this was way before all this pay to win was ever even mentioned or thought about, or I even considered that this would be a possibility. So well before that, I already played the game, and it was overall pretty solid. So I never really expected Diablo Immortal to become the biggest new game of all time. That's something that I would play for many years to come. My eyes were always set firmly on Diablo 4, and to some degree also PoE and PoE 2. The thing is that Diablo Immortal is not actually a successor to Diablo 3. It is a game that kind of looks similar on the surface, but they didn't name it Diablo 4 for a reason. First of all, it's a completely different platform. It's a mobile game. Second, it also doesn't even have the same genre. This is an MMO. MMOs work completely differently from ARPGs. So if we have something to go with like WoW, then they have completely different systems of how people are engaged with the game, how we want to progress your character. For example, in Diablo 3, you have seasonal resets every few months. Everyone blasts, like crazy for a few days, a few weeks, depending on how serious they are about the game. And then people kind of chill out until the next season. MMOs are the exact opposite of that. They are designed to get you to log in every single day. They get you to interact with people. They usually force you to group up for certain content, exactly like we see it in Diablo Immortal. So just from those two perspectives, they are already extremely different in what you would expect from a Diablo game. So Diablo Immortal is just not really a Diablo game. It just has the visuals, they have some copy-pasted assets, okay, whatever, but it's simply not a Diablo game. I know that there are a lot of people that are hating on Diablo Immortal because of the way it is designed, because they expected something completely different when they saw the name Diablo. But realistically, I think it was pretty obvious from the start that this would be a very different game. And with such an expectation, I went into the release knowing that this is not really the game for me. I am not the target audience for this game, and neither are most other Diablo players. This is not a game made for Diablo players, unless you're a really big fan of the franchise and you want to try it out. So this is exactly what I've done. But I knew from the start that this has a pretty short expiry date for a player like me, and probably for most especially people coming from Diablo 3. And it's not just for the fact that the game is pay to win, which obviously is something that I, as a very competitive player that essentially has a business model that relies on getting rank 1s and teaching other people how to do the same, doesn't really like. It's also just that this whole discrepancy between MMOs and ARPGs probably wasn't really obvious to most people going into this release. So while they took a lot of things from Diablo 3 and tried to fit it into Diablo Immortal, like bounties, like rifts, like legendary gems, the classes are kind of similar. So you can definitely feel that, they tried to take what was there already, and they weren't really too innovative with it. So they tried to make it maybe more modern, try to fit it in so that certain things that we know from Diablo 3 didn't really work well, are a bit improved. for example, everyone hates bounties in Diablo 3, but they're kind of necessary for certain things. While on the other hand, in Immortal, bounties are overall probably a bit better, but on the other hand, they're absolutely useless, so no one does them anyway. And then there are rifts, for example, which is by far the #1 activity in Diablo 3. This is what you do like 98% of the time. And in Diablo Immortal, on the other hand, rifts are also pretty much irrelevant. Like, you don't really farm rifts for anything. Instead, you farm dungeons, you farm outdoor content, which also does have its appeal, in my opinion. So the whole endgame reward loop is completely different in Diablo Immortal, which also makes it kind of hard to compare the two games. Another thing is also Diablo 3 is a game that's a decade old. It has seen a lot of updates over the years. And yeah, while it hasn't received like the big major reworks and endgame content, expansions and stuff like that, it does have a big variety of especially builds to play for, all levels of skill and commitment. And this is a really strong part of Diablo 3 right now that, for example, Immortal is lacking. But on the other hand, Immortal is a very fresh game. So there are a lot of possibilities with how you can combo certain skills, certain sets, certain legendaries in Immortal. But obviously, this is a game in its infancy. So if we give Immortal like another 5 years or so, there's probably going to be, 5 times the amount of legendaries. There's going to be other new systems that allow you to customize your character in various ways. But in the end, the thing is that in Immortal, you're also like way more bound to your choices long term, or you are way more subject to RNG. So in Diablo 3, for example, you can set up any build from scratch in a few hours. And in Diablo Immortal, you will have to grind for weeks, for months, to ever even get to the point where you can really customize your character. So that is definitely a big downside, and it just makes the gameplay quite repetitive, because you cannot really play different builds. In Diablo 3, you can swap your build anytime, you can play a different character. You can play the same character with like 10 different builds every single season if you want. And there's a huge amount of variety. Another thing that Diablo Immortal is lacking that Diablo 3 has is actually difficult content. So in Diablo 3, you can, push greater rifts, and there is actually a reason to do so because of the leaderboards, and the leaderboards are not entirely designed around pay to win. So it comes down to your grinding, it comes down to your time investment, your personal skill, your personal experience with the game in order to place on rank 1 on leaderboards in Diablo 3. Where, for example, for the PvE leaderboards in particular in Diablo Immortal, pay to win is king. And because of this combat rating mechanic, there is no way that you can really out-push yourself out of some small range of challenge rift tiers to maybe like 5 up to maybe 10 tiers or so above your expected limit. In Diablo 3, pushing comes really down to a lot of different factors, and there is a much bigger incentive on playing well, which is not only important when you're actually going for a leaderboard rank and you're doing this big push, but also in general, the efficiency at which you farm experience, at which you farm items is very important and is quite heavily influenced by your ability to play the game well. Whereas in Diablo Immortal, a lot of things are time-gated, a lot of things are also simply too easy to farm. There's not really anything that you can really do right or wrong. And a dungeon run cannot really be sped up very much. Outdoor farming group just runs circles and kills every monster in sight. So there is not really much to think about. There's not really much to strategize around besides just inviting 3 other people and then going to some place to farm. And aside from playing PvP, which is actually one of the strong points of Diablo Immortal versus Diablo 3, which basically doesn't have PvP, I think that Diablo Immortal is simply way too easy of a game. Like, there's no reason to really try anything difficult. There's no reason to, try to push very high in challenge rifts. There's no reason to go to the higher hell difficulties early, because if you're more than like 150 combat rating behind, you're gonna get destroyed. And if you are kind of close to it, you can try, but this is really only very few scenarios where you will end up exactly in the right spot where you can do that. And most of the time you just farm random easy content. So I get it's a mobile game. I get that the audience is probably expected to be extremely casual. This is also, quite obvious from all those daily caps, those weekly caps, etc. in the game. So the game is not really intended to be farmed all day long. But on the other hand, I think this lack of difficult PvE content is really disturbing in an ARPG type game like Diablo Immortal. So there needs to be something where people can kind of like, try to push as much as possible and actually get something out of it. And this just doesn't exist at all. I mean, yes, you can bash your head into the wall in a challenge rift and try to push plus 300 combat rating, plus 300 or 400 combat rating even in a challenge rift. But on the other hand, you're gonna wait like 3 days, you're gonna get your next Scoria, you're gonna get your next, blacksmith upgrade or another item upgrade or two. And suddenly you're gonna smash the previous level of challenge rift because of your combat rating difference you have acquired until that point. Whereas in Diablo 3, for example, you farm up to a certain point and then your character barely progresses further from there. You have just breached pretty much your build's cap, and then the only way to improve that is to fish more or to grind more paragons so that the character becomes more powerful. But this happens very, very slowly. So over the course of several weeks or months in a season, you can maybe grind up another like 5 levels or so. Whereas in Diablo Immortal, for example, you just get like 5 levels on the fly, not really doing much for it in like a week or two. So this means that in Diablo 3, pushing high rifts and trying to place on a leaderboard even early in a season, which is something that I do every single season. Usually I play 2-3 weeks or so, really like hardcore, like all day, every day. Then I get all my rank 1s and I hope they're gonna stick until the end. So this usually doesn't really go well because people just keep grinding for another 3 months after me and they will just beat me. But sometimes I do keep some of those top ranks. And in Diablo Immortal, you just can't do that. There is no reason to really, try like 1,000 times to push to like a high challenge rift and defeat like a really difficult run because, like a week later, it's just way easier. So yeah, with all those points mentioned, I barely scratched the surface of the whole pay-to-win topic, and I've talked about this 1,000 times. 1,000 other people have talked about this 1,000 times. Yeah, pretty much no one really likes pay-to-win games, I guess, and it's pretty obvious from the reception of Diablo Immortal, and I'm not really gonna go too much into this. But what I was trying to say with this video and my points here is that even without this whole pay-to-win topic, I believe that Diablo 3 is simply a superior game, at least from my perspective, from someone who likes to play competitively, from someone who likes to grind, from someone who just tries to figure out everything there is in a game, theory craft, make builds, try out things. I had a lot of fun doing those things in Diablo Immortal, but I feel like there is simply not enough to really stay interested in the long term, even if there was no pay to win in the game. Obviously, there might be updates down the line that make Immortal way more interesting of a game. Diablo 3 was also not very well received at release, but I figured there was still, enough to do, enough to explore. There was actually difficult content, something that people were working on to try to beat, for extended periods of time. Like just going through the campaign on Inferno difficulty was a huge feat for most people. And this is just completely missing from a game like Diablo Immortal. So yeah, I just wanted to give my points about this topic, give my opinion about the game. So in general, I think Diablo Immortal is a solid game, especially if you play it completely free to play and you don't care about getting rank 1, then this is not a bad experience, I believe. It is buggy and, some stuff is a bit clunky and, this kind of things that happen on a release, kind of expected, I believe. The pay to win obviously is way too much for any kind of competitiveness. So yeah, I just went in there, trying to fight this uphill battle, and I knew it would be rough. I knew that, I would eventually quit, not because of the pay to win, but also because of most of the other things I just discussed. So the pay to win is just another factor that makes it not a long-term, goal for me to try to compete in Diablo Immortal compared to D3 and eventually D4. So I'm gonna leave you with this. I'm gonna be making probably some more content for Diablo Immortal, but my time is slowly coming to an end. I have a few more things planned, like a big monk guide. I want to talk about PvP in general, and yeah, we'll see, for example, how the Immortal Reign will go. We're probably gonna try to defend it and see it from there. But yeah, very soon, this is pretty much it for me, and I'm gonna make the cut, and we'll see. Then we're gonna be back to Diablo 3, and maybe the 4 beta at some point later this fall or something. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Let me know what you think. Let me know about your own impressions of Diablo Immortal, especially if you have played Diablo 3 too. I also heard from a lot of people that Diablo Immortal actually gave them some new appreciation for D3. I can definitely concur with that attitude as well. So yeah, just let me know your thoughts. So hope you enjoyed mine. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.